The unicorn fish prowled the depths of the coast of a storm-ravaged island. Once you descended into darkness, it was already far too late. The unicorn fish's worst enemy is the eel. The fish has a miraculous sense of hearing, and was said to be eel to hear an eel at the length of 20 galleons. The sound of air as it travels through an air hose is almost identical to the hiss of an eel. The unicorn fish was known to thrash an air hose as it became more and more enraged by the sound, until divers were left gasping for air in the darkened depths below. Many a soul perished by the horn, until the unicorn was caught in a fisherman's net. Divers have now gone back to the comfort of a relatively peaceful dive, but we have no way to know. Was this a simple genetic anomaly, or do others of its kind exist, waiting to leave the next dive, or perhaps yourself, gasping in the ocean's depths? This poor creature is the last of the giant horned rhinos. Once known to roam the deserts of a faraway island, its number has now been decimated to extinction. This rhino had the unfortunate accident of piercing a wooden barrel with metal hoops. The hoops made it quite impossible for the rhino to remove the barrel once it was firmly lodged on. This rhino was found dead of starvation, thirst, or a combination of the two, due to being unable to use its mouth properly. Even as giant horned rhinos go, this is quite the specimen, with the horns surpassing any measure to date, and with this one's death, will most likely never be bested again. The ocean was quiet and motionless except for the occasional creaking of sea-soaked boards of the numerous ships that dotted the seafloor like a graveyard. Each hull was pierced by what was first assumed to be the cannonballs of a marauding ship of war striking quick and true. The odd thing was, every ship that was sunk had no survivors. They were all thought to have been captured. An armored transport galleon, led by a known drunkard, Captain Halfway, was making its way through the dark and dangerous area. Carcasses of ship hulls unknowingly slid under the ship on the seafloor below. The ship was rocked by what was first deemed to be cannon fire. But when the crew tried to find them, there were no other ships present, however. Captain Halfway was called for with a knocking on this door. A known fan of a drink or 8 before bed, he would often awaken late in the day. Thinking the captain was slumped over the keg again, his second-in-command pounded on the door, to no avail. He finally gave up and battered down the door to the cabin. He found the creature hanging above, wedged between the hull and metal strappings, trapping it in place. It is the only horned shark known to have existed, and it is rumored to be a remnant from the age of dinosaurs. We can only hope this is the last of those remnants. Captain Halfway was found later in the belly of the beast, cut, sliced, but still sleeping. They were able to stitch him up and place him in a new bed before he ever awakened. At this point on our tour, we ask you not to sniff the cork of this keg. This is the actual keg of Captain Halfway.
Oh, no. Do not sniff. If you sniff the cork, you'll go unconscious. You have to push those beans up your nose. What is it called? The bean soup?
I have to give people the bean soup. I don't remember the name of it. It's a bean soup that served as a beverage. What did they call it? It had a weird name.
Coffee.
Coffee, yeah, that's it. A bean soup served as a beverage. Why, if you had a bean soup, would you not just enjoy it as a soup? Why would you feel the need to enjoy it as a beverage for some strange reason? I don't know.
Yeah.
This weird world.
Speaking of which, there's Chef Greenfoot over there.
Oh, yes. There he is. Hello.
He's going to serve up some of that popped out corn with smoked butter.
Oh, yeah. Well, that'll be at another time. Not while we're on the tour, though.
No, but there's a tour later this weekend.
great northern factory disaster took place on a particularly cold, dark, rainy evening. The main source of heat in the frozen north was a giant fireplace located beneath the smokestack here in front of us. The factory backed up to a large rock mountain, and the entrance to a great coal mine was built off the factory into the depths of that mountain. The employees of the factory found a particularly large snake roasting on the coals late one afternoon and proceeded to prepare it for their dinner pot. It was not unusual for someone to bring whatever they had to share, although they could not determine who had brought the snake. They made a feast of the snake anyhow and went back to work. As the evening grew colder and darker, they placed more and more coal onto the fire. What no one realized is that the snake deliciously roasting on the fire had chased a rather plump sheep from the mountain top. The snake and sheep both fell over the edge and landed on the top of the smokestack. The snake plunged further through, down to the coals below, as the sheep was wedged high above the factory. Toxic smoke had already weakened most of the workers to the point they could not get out by the time the panic began. All but 3 workers were killed in the tragedy. The death toll was said to be near 458 lives, and would remain the largest number of people killed by a single sheep for at least 2 more decades.
Oh, I kind of jumped a little bit. I'm sorry. The spider eggs. I think one of them hatched.
Well, you need to be careful. They will hatch if it's warm enough. You know all this, though. The invention before us here is now one of a kind, but it was originally invented by a medical spa. The spa had begun to suffer somewhat financially due to a lack of space for multiple tubs in their water room, as it was known. To maximize customer turnaround, a Geo tub was invented. The customer would bathe with bar of soap, locking their midsection through the device. A candle was placed under the rope holding the weighted blade in order to rush the customer along. But unexpectedly, the Geo tub was a resounding success. The warm water, combined with the growing anxiety of the bathing customer, was known to sweat out even the deepest layer of grime, leaving customers with a clean they had not achieved in years. The device was so successful it was soon sold to the home for personal use. The spa neglected to remember that not everyone takes a bath with those presents such as they had at the day spa. The carnage of home users lighting the candle, locking themselves through the device only to have no way to escape, resulted in extensive lawsuits from families of the deceased. The spa was bankrupted, and all versions of this device were demanded to be destroyed. This model was used as a research model by the enforcement brigade, who went door to door to ensure the destruction of all the other units. Oh, if you see staining on that blade, we've been told it's candle wax.
Oh yes, most definitely candle wax. Not blood.
Just candle wax. Wild bears tend to keep to themselves unless they are disturbed. But that's not true of the cave bears of a mountainous region on a frozen island. The residents of the upper mountains grew tired of watching friend and family consumed before their eyes on their way down to the village below. To deceive the cave bears, they tried all method before realizing bears are almost blind to the bears of their kind and ignore them completely. The skin before you here is a cave bear skin, which has been modified by the residents. The bucket is tacked onto the skin from the underside. The stump is nailed to a piece of wood from below. The people would sit on the stump and hold on to the handle in front of them. Their feet would be placed just behind the front legs. To descend the mountain past the caverns of the cave bears, they would use this as a sled to speed by bears unnoticed. To return home, this pelt would be worn over the back, with a bucket handle strapped under the chin of the wearer. One person could, while strapped into this device, elude the bears on the way down and back up to home. 2 people could both ride and wear the pelt, if necessary. This oddity was known as the dinner plate of Sir Vondel. Sir Vondel was a well-known fighter for a fearsome king. He was found many an evening huddled round his dinner plate. It isn't known what or who Sir Vondel had an appetite for, as the townsfolk and the king were always too afraid to ask. Sir Vondel was eventually defeated in a brawler's ring set up to test the mettle of various competitors. The townsfolk immediately removed this horrendous dinner plate and shipped it to us for safekeeping. Here before you is a little-known rare menace. The toilet rabbit. Known to favor long, dark tunnels, it wasn't a large leap until this offshoot from the regular rabbit family emerged. It has developed a preference for the undesirable stench tunnels instead of its family's meadow tunnels neath the wildflowers. We've only encountered 2 of these in all of our travels, the one before you here, and the one still on the loose, despite our best efforts to lure it out. I implore you to remember this refrain when nature next calls to you, when you need to take a sit. Stop and think a bit. Remember its sharp teeth, and be sure to look beneath. It is always wise to watch between your thighs. Is there a rabbit in your hole while you're warming up the bowl? Remember this refrain, and always, always look into the drain.
Just one correction on that story. You say there's 2 of them, but there may be multiples by now.
Who can say? There's only 2 that we know of. We have seen 2, that's all we know. We couldn't know beyond that.
I did fall asleep in the museum with a tour group, and the sheep had some strange powers going on. Dragged bodies across the museum, and when I did wake up, I did see a bunny, maybe mating with another bunny.
I don't know. There's a possibility. Well, we don't know if it would carry the genetics, even if it would transfer over. We only know for sure of 2. That's all we can warn people about. You know that. Before you here lies the once prized possession of a mad count. Born on his estate, he had a bed made for the beast and himself, where they would both take to the bed for weeks at a time, engaged in full-on feasting sessions. It is said that the count could out-eat both heads of the beast on its best day. The count slipped further and further into madness as time and feasts wore on, until he passed away late one evening. By the time they found what was left of him, they made a decision to put down the beast and preserve it as a warning, lest it woo another soul to their doom.
So 2 heads. Where does it poop?
Well, we've had conjecture that if there exists such a beast as this with 2 heads, then surely as nature has that very peculiar way of evening itself out, there must also exist a beast that's only the 2 other ends. If there exists such a beast of only those 2 ends, then I question, where does it gain its sustenance from? Where does it eat from?